What's up, guys? This is Jay Griff. Welcome back to the Dark Souls 2 Blog of Pain. In this episode, I'm going to talk about the bosses of the Dark Souls franchise, not specifically about one or two. I want to talk about both of them because the bosses in Dark Souls as a whole are pretty much the most important part of the game. The environments are very difficult, and the enemies are typically very strong and can really put the hurt on you. But where the rubber meets the road for Dark Souls is the boss battles. The bosses are the big fucking thing. Compared to the areas they're in, they make them look like trash. And that's probably the best thing about them is that they're just so intense compared to the rest of the game, which is already very intense. But specifically, I want to talk first about their designs. Because in Dark Souls 1, okay, I can't speak for Demon Souls again, but in Dark Souls 1, all of the bosses had really strong designs. Even my pet peeves, the Bed of Chaos and the Four Kings, even though the Four Kings only got one design and they should have had four, that one design was very, very solid. All of the bosses in Dark Souls 1 were extremely good in the way they were designed. I mean, starting from the beginning with the Asylum Demon, and then, you get hit with the Taurus Demon and the Capra Demon, and they're both very imposing, very frightening things. And then you run into the Gaping Dragon. You run into Smough and Ornstein. They have one of the best designs I've ever seen. I think the best design in that game is Chaos Witch Quelag. She has such a cool design, and she's such a cool boss, and so hard to defeat. It just made it so rewarding, like not just getting to fight these bosses, but getting to see these bosses is kind of an experience. I mean, they just looked so cool. Even unto the end of the game with the Bed of Chaos, it looked really cool, even though it shit to play against it. It was a really cool boss. The Four Kings, a lot of thought and care went into that one character model that did make it in. A lot of people don't even notice that, like, they all have a big gaping hole, because it's kind of hard to see with the color scheme, but they have a huge hole over their hearts. And you might, wonder, okay, what's that all about? And with their monochromatic scheme, it's kind of hard to tell the difference between anything on that character model. But if you take your character and you take off all his gear and he's hollowed, you'll notice that he has a scar over his heart, a very distinctive scar. And some people believe that that scar is telling of undead and kind of a symptom of consumption of humanity, in the same way that, like, people who are using certain drugs will have like a scar in a specific place wherever they do it. Um, and it looks like the Four Kings, who used the Dark Wraiths to gather all the humanity that they could, have taken in so much humanity that they don't just have a scar there, they have a gaping hole, implying that they can never be satiated again. It's just, a lot of cool thought went into that, and I'm gonna try to edit this one and flash some pictures on the screen of some of these cool bosses. And in Dark Souls 2, the torch is carried. A lot of the bosses are really, really cool, but there are a few exceptions where I think they completely dropped the ball. I'm not sure what happened with them, but I personally don't think that those bosses were up to snuff in design. Now, it starts off really strong. The Last Giant is a really cool design. I love the Dragon Rider. You can't get better than the Dragon Slayer because he's just Ornstein painted black. That was a no-brainer. But even the Smelter Demon, who was the demon that had me stuck on the last episode, really, really cool design for that. The Old Iron King that followed him, really cool design. And the boss after that I fought, recently beat, which is a giant spider demon, or not a demon, but a giant spider boss. And you might think that, like, oh, it's just a giant spider. That's stupid. No, they put a lot of care and attention into making this thing super intimidating, and it's different. It's got like two heads, one on each side of it, so there's no safe place to attack, and it's enormous and just like all kinds of really sharp, and it's really dark down there. It's really cool. I've already talked about how cool I thought the Lost Sinner looked, and some of the other bosses. But there's two designs of bosses that I thought were very weak, and it was a shame because they could have done a lot with them, I feel like. And they were both in the same area. They're both in an area called Harvest Valley, which is kind of a joke because the valley, you're not harvesting shit down there because it is flooded with poison, and it's not really a farming area, it's a mine. So I'm not sure what's going on with that, but there's two bosses there, at least two that I found and fought. And one is called the Covetous Demon, and the other one is called Mytha the Baneful Queen, or Mytha. Um, and through reading some of the gear descriptions, reading their souls descriptions, talking to, I think there's one NPC that talks to you in that area, um, you can learn a little bit about these two beings and who they were before they became the bosses that they are. You learn that the Covetous Demon was, he was a guy, presumably a noble, who very much pined for the attention and the affection of Mytha, the queen of the area. She was supposedly the most beautiful woman in all of whatever the world at that time was called, the fairest in the land, as they say. And he did everything he could to win her attention, but she had no eyes for him, whoever he was, whatever he was. So, in his despair, it's said that he became a demon. Now, how he did that, I don't know, and I'll talk about that in a different video, but he became a demon, presumably to impress the queen with his power and his devotion to her. And that still didn't work, because it says that in him becoming a demon, it only deepened his loneliness. And he became the Covetous Demon. Now, the word covetous, implies that he wants things. He wants everything. He covets the queen. And when I heard that, the immediate first thing that I actually thought of was, I don't know what this character is called, but in the movie Labyrinth, there is kind of a demon thing that is like a pack rat. It has all these items, and it carries them in a huge, jury-rigged rucksack thing on its back. And it tries to turn the girl into a demon like itself by loading her down with all this crap that she doesn't need. And that's the first thing I thought of, is that I see this demon who's like, okay, he can't have the queen, so maybe he gathered everything he possibly could to himself. He gathered all the treasure and all the equipment and all the soldiers, and maybe he's also got this huge pack on his back. And we come in, and he doesn't want us to take any of his stuff, so he's trying to kill us. And maybe he's using the stuff on his back, and maybe that's the stages of the boss fight. No, it was way lamer than that. You walk in. And I'm sorry, there's no other way to describe this stupid thing. You walk in, and it's a hut. It's a fucking hut from Star Wars, and it's just staring you down and crawling over because he's gonna eat you. That's his thing, is that he's the covetous demon. He couldn't get his sex, so he wants his food, and he just wants to eat. So that's the whole thing. And that's terrible. That is terrible that they would do that. And his fight actually is kind of lame too, because I walked in and the first thing I noticed is that there's all these pots hanging from chains in the ceiling, and I thought, okay, there's kind of like a green light coming out of them. Maybe there's like poison or some acid or something, because there's pots full of that crap all over this area. And I'm like, maybe if I shoot that, it'll fall down and it'll like drench the boss and do some damage to it. And I shot one of them, but there wasn't a liquid in there. There was a body. There was a guy in there. It was an enemy type, and it fell down, and it just kind of stands there and lumbers around. It's an undead laborer. They don't even fight. But the boss immediately went like, oh, that thingy, I want to eat that, and it ignores you. If there's one of those guys on the ground, it will not aggro you at all, no matter what. So I shot down like 7 of these things and just followed him around the room, hitting him in the tail. And then he died. I didn't take a hit. There was no challenge to the boss fight at all. And, admittedly, I solved the puzzle, as it were, but come on. Like, even though boss fights like this are built on, like, a trick, you don't make it that easy. But so, get past the covetous demon. Whatever. He's the first guy in the area. Maybe the queen will be a better one. Because here's the story we find out behind the queen. Mitha, the fairest in the land, pined for the affection of, I believe she was betrothed to either the prince of the Iron Keep or the old Iron King himself. Or maybe the prince that became the old Iron King. It's not exactly clear. But she pined for his affection, and he, similar to her with the other guy, had no eyes for her. He did not care. He cared only about his kingdom, his iron, what he was getting out of the ground, and there's a story to that too. So she looked for a way to enhance her beauty, and for some reason or another, the poison that they discovered and that now they pump out of the ground, while it was terrible, terrible for all of the people and all of the servants and all of the things that lived there, it did wonders for her skin. It enhanced her beauty, but it also drove her crazy. Or maybe her desire drove her crazy. But that's how she became the thing that is now the boss. And I was like, you can go far with that. You can make a really cool boss fight with that kind of a story. And so you go in there to, fight her, and you're like, okay, what's she going to be like? What's she going to be like? She is a Medusa that's holding her head in her hand. That's it. And it's not even a particularly challenging boss fight because, I went in there stupid. Like, there's a way to drain the poison out of the area. You set fire to one of the windmills and it loses all its material, and so it stops turning the machines that are pumping the poison up, and that empties out her boss arena. But when I went in there, the boss arena was full of this poisoned water, so I was constantly taking damage. The boss was constantly healing. There was no safe place for me to stand, and I still beat her on the first attempt. And this is a game where some of the bosses have absolutely crushed me, as we explored before. So they could have made her way harder than she is, but I'd still beat her, even fighting her completely retarded. But they just could have done so much more with that backstory for a cooler design, not a design we've seen a million times. I don't need to see something that was in God of War in Dark Souls. Come on. Come on! Let's get a little original out here. And they're original with most of their bosses. Like I said, some of them are really, really cool, but they dropped the ball on these two, and I'm hoping they don't drop the ball again. Because, immediately after that, you go Smelter Demon, Old Iron King. There was another undead kind of hive body boss thing. So another echo of Nito, the Grave Lord. And then there's that spider thing I was talking about, which is called the Duke's Dear Freyja, which I found to be a very interesting name because the Duke was Seath the Scaleless in Dark Souls 1. He was the last dragon, and in this boss room, there is a great soul, which is, I presume, why the thing was so powerful. I was like, why is this spider wrecking my shit? It is a really hard boss fight. Just wrecking us. And I'm like, why is it so strong? Because it's guarding a Lord Soul. That's why it's so damn strong. So that all made sense. But it was called the Duke's Dear Freyja. And I was like, that's, the Duke was Seath. But I'm sure they're talking about a completely different Duke here. And then I noticed in the back where the soul was sitting, right above it, is a giant statue or a petrified body of a dragon. So immediately I'm like, maybe that is Seath the Scaleless. Now, Seath didn't have his own Lord Soul. He had a shard of Gwyn's Lord Soul. So, maybe. But, he also held that soul inside of him for a long, long time. So there could be parts of him attached to it now. I don't know. Let's see, bosses. They're still the best part of the Souls series, and some of the designs are still really, really good. So I'm I'm really enjoying it. The bosses, sometimes there's a little bit of a disparity in the difficulty. Some of them I wreck them, like Mitha, like the Covetous Demon, like both the undead, the Skeleton Lord, and whatever this undead thing was. I didn't see its name, honestly, because I killed it too quickly. Wreck them. But then there's the Smelter Demon. There's the Old Iron King. There's the Duke's Dear Frasia, who absolutely wreck me. Crazy, crazy, crazy. But I'm loving it. I'm loving it. I'm going to talk about something very particular I noticed about the Old Iron King in the next episode of this blog. Something I found very, very interesting. So, this has been Jay Griff. Thanks for listening, guys.